The experience of chronic mental exhaustion and persistent tension significantly impacts financial decision-making and overall financial well-being. When an individual maintains a constant state of heightened responsibility and mental strain without adequate rest or relief, the ability to engage in thoughtful, innovative, and strategic financial behavior diminishes. This continuous stress response triggers what can be described as a survival mode mindset, where the brain prioritizes immediate safety and risk avoidance over growth-oriented activities. In such a state, cognitive resources are diverted toward managing anxiety and threat perception, leaving reduced capacity for creative problem-solving, opportunity recognition, and long-term planning. The consequence is a functional but limited approach to money management that often results in poor financial choices and missed opportunities for wealth generation and stability. Persistent internal tension affects the nervous system and emotional regulation, leading to psychological fatigue that further hampers clear thinking and rational evaluation of financial options. The interaction between emotional stress and financial behavior is complex and bidirectional. Chronic stress can lead to impulsive spending, procrastination in handling financial tasks, or excessive risk aversion, each damaging in distinct ways. Cognitive biases are amplified under stress, including a narrowed focus on short-term threats and diminished confidence in decision-making abilities. This creates a cycle where the stress about finances exacerbates the difficulties in managing them effectively, perpetuating the state of exhaustion and limiting financial progress. The psychological burden arising from feeling solely responsible for financial outcomes intensifies this dynamic. Carrying financial responsibility as an exclusive obligation without support or shared load often leads to feelings of isolation, pressure, and burnout. This is compounded when individuals suppress emotional needs, resist vulnerability, or avoid seeking help due to internalized beliefs about strength and self-reliance. The impact extends beyond emotional health, influencing behavioral patterns that restrict financial growth. For instance, an individual may unconsciously avoid education about money management or reject new financial strategies out of fear or mistrust, thus sustaining stagnant financial habits and limiting adaptability to changing economic conditions. It is important to understand that this state of persistent strength and control can paradoxically act as a barrier to true financial health and prosperity. The mind's perception of constant threat results in a defensive posture that inhibits the flow of financial resources and opportunities. Fear often manifests as hesitation to invest, diversify income streams, or take calculated risks that are necessary for building wealth. Simultaneously, stagnation in learning or refusal to adjust financial approaches restricts upward mobility. Recognizing this dynamic is crucial for initiating change and breaking free from cycles of financial strain. Addressing this issue requires an integrated approach focused on reducing mental exhaustion, fostering emotional resilience, and redesigning the internal relationship with money. Relief of chronic stress supports clearer cognition and revitalizes creative problem-solving capacities vital for effective financial management. Developing awareness around emotional patterns linked to money responsibility allows for reframing beliefs and behaviors that restrict growth. This process encourages openness to assistance, continuous education, and strategic change, all essential for restoring financial flow and cultivating abundance. This discussion will cover the psychological underpinnings of financial exhaustion, the impact of sustained mental tension on money management capabilities, and the connection between internal emotional states and external financial behaviors. Practical strategies for mental and emotional relief will be outlined, emphasizing the importance of conscious self-care and psychological flexibility in fostering healthier financial habits. Additionally, the role of identity construction in financial empowerment will be explored, highlighting how a shift from perceived burdensome responsibility to balanced agency can enable sustainable financial well-being. Through this comprehensive examination, the goal is to provide foundational knowledge and actionable insights that empower individuals to recognize and alleviate the mental blocks restricting their financial growth. Understanding these intersecting factors is critical for transforming the relationship with money from one of survival and obligation to one characterized by flow, creativity, and abundance. The integration of psychological awareness and financial education serves as the cornerstone for building a more resilient and prosperous financial future. Persistent exposure to chronic stress triggers neurochemical changes in the brain that directly influence decision-making processes, particularly those involving risk assessment and reward evaluation. Elevated cortisol levels, a hallmark of prolonged stress, impair prefrontal cortex functioning, which is responsible for executive functions such as planning, impulse control, and future-oriented thinking. This neurobiological shift undermines an individual's capacity to evaluate financial options objectively, often resulting in impulsive purchases or an excessive focus on immediate gain rather than sustainable wealth accumulation. Additionally, the diminished neuroplasticity associated with stress limits adaptability to evolving economic circumstances or innovative financial strategies, further constraining upward mobility. Beyond neurobiology, the somatic aspect of continuous tension profoundly affects cognitive clarity and emotional regulation. Chronic activation of the autonomic nervous system leads to physical symptoms, such as muscular tightness and headaches, that drain emotional reserves and sap mental energy. This physical discomfort then cycles back into cognitive inefficiency, creating a feedback loop that hampers reflective thinking necessary for effective fiscal planning. When individuals are preoccupied with managing bodily stress symptoms, their capacity to engage in complex financial analyses or long-term goal setting decreases markedly. Moreover, habitual self-reliance in managing fiscal duties often entails a form of psychological isolation that impedes social support mechanisms beneficial for financial advancement. Collaboration with peers, mentors, or advisors introduces alternative viewpoints and shared accountability, which can enhance strategic decision-making and resilience under uncertainty. Yet, internalized societal expectations related to strength and autonomy frequently deter individuals from accessing these resources, perpetuating knowledge gaps and limiting exposure to potentially transformative opportunities, such as investment diversification or professional development. It is also imperative to consider the role of cognitive distortions that become entrenched through sustained psychological duress. Patterns such as catastrophic thinking, overgeneralization, and confirmation bias skew perception, exaggerating risks and minimizing prospects. For example, an individual might disproportionately fear financial loss based on isolated past setbacks, disregarding historical data that supports calculated risk-taking's efficacy. These mental shortcuts compromise the ability to weigh options realistically and may lead to conservative financial postures that inhibit growth. Aware of these challenges, interventions aimed at enhancing metacognitive awareness can substantially improve decision-making quality. Techniques such as mindfulness-based stress reduction foster greater recognition of automatic thought patterns and emotional triggers, enabling individuals to pause before reacting reflexively to financial stimuli. This intentional reflection creates space for intentional choices aligned with long-term objectives rather than immediate anxieties or ingrained defensive responses. Further, adopting a systems thinking perspective can illuminate the interconnectedness of external economic factors and internal psychological states. Understanding market fluctuations, regulatory frameworks, and economic cycles in conjunction with personal stressors and biases empowers individuals to contextualize their financial situations without assigning undue blame or pressure on themselves. This holistic comprehension encourages strategic flexibility, whereby plans are periodically revisited and adjusted in response to both internal readiness and external opportunity shifts. Practical application of these insights often involves structured routines that mitigate cognitive overload and facilitate steady progress. Implementing scheduled financial reviews breaks down complex planning into manageable tasks, reducing overwhelm and preventing procrastination. Concurrently, establishing boundaries around work-life balance and allocating time for restorative practices supports cognitive regeneration and emotional stability, indirectly enhancing capacity for analytical tasks related to fiscal decision-making. On an educational front, fostering financial literacy through credible sources tailored to varying levels of expertise can demystify complex concepts such as compound interest, risk diversification, and asset allocation. This knowledge base empowers individuals to engage proactively with their finances, confident in their understanding, and less swayed by anxiety-induced avoidance or stagnation behaviors. Educational efforts that incorporate emotional intelligence components further equip individuals to recognize and manage feelings that influence spending, saving, and investing choices. In pursuing greater equilibrium, it is beneficial to integrate community-building approaches that normalize dialogue about financial challenges and vulnerabilities. Platforms encouraging open exchanges reduce stigma and create environments conducive to mutual learning and emotional support. Such social engagement counters the detrimental effects of solitary burden-bearing and nurtures a sense of shared responsibility and collective growth. Collectively, these considerations underscore the necessity of multifaceted, integrative strategies that address cognitive, emotional, physiological, and social dimensions. By embracing new perspectives beyond singular stress models, individuals can cultivate enhanced clarity, resilience, and adaptability, key elements in fostering sustainable prosperity and minimizing the debilitating consequences of persistent tension. Sustained psychological fatigue has profound implications for cognitive efficiency, particularly concerning attention regulation and mental flexibility. When mental resources are drained, the capacity to process new information diminishes, impairing the ability to identify unconventional financial solutions or alternative revenue sources. Mental exhaustion reduces attentional control, resulting in decreased vigilance for subtle shifts in economic environments or emerging trends that could prove advantageous. This attentional narrowing confines perspectives to familiar patterns, discouraging exploration beyond habitual behaviors. Furthermore, sustained mental strain negatively influences motivation and persistence in pursuing financial objectives. The depletion of willpower hampers the initiation and maintenance of constructive fiscal activities such as budgeting, debt reduction, or investment evaluation. Fatigue lowers tolerance for effortful cognitive tasks, often causing procrastination or avoidance of essential financial responsibilities. Over time, these postponed actions accumulate, leading to increased stressors and a compounding effect on overall well-being. Another crucial consideration involves the role of mental fatigue in impairing interpersonal communication related to economic affairs. Tiredness causes individuals to withdraw from collaborative planning or negotiation opportunities that might provide critical support or leverage. Reduced social engagement translates to diminished feedback loops and a lower likelihood of benefiting from collective wisdom or shared financial responsibility, which are key elements in cultivating effective resource management strategies. Neurologically, mental overload disrupts the balance of neurotransmitters such as dopamine and serotonin, substances integral to reward processing and mood regulation. Declines in these neurochemicals lead to decreased satisfaction with achievements, thereby undermining reinforcement mechanisms that encourage proactive financial behavior. This biochemical environment fosters apathy or pessimism, which are counterproductive to taking initiative within complex economic contexts. Additionally, the mental toll of carrying excessive burdens often translates into disruptions of sleep patterns, further exacerbating cognitive impairments. Insufficient or fragmented rest detrimentally affects memory consolidation and executive functions, critical for assimilating financial knowledge and applying it effectively. Circadian rhythm disturbances weaken impulse control and heighten emotional volatility, weakening the stability needed for prudent fiscal judgments. There is also evidence that mental exhaustion contributes to impaired risk assessment accuracy. When experiencing cognitive weariness, the ability to properly weigh potential benefits against costs is compromised. This impairment might manifest in either overestimating threats, leading to overly conservative fiscal behavior, or underestimating dangers, resulting in reckless financial choices. Both scenarios produce suboptimal outcomes that hinder economic progress. In organizational environments, persistent cognitive fatigue can reduce workplace productivity and increase financial insecurity. Decreased focus may lead to errors in salary negotiations, overlooked opportunities for advancement, or inefficient handling of bonus structures and benefits plans. Individuals experiencing mental depletion are less likely to advocate effectively for themselves, resulting in reduced earning potential and diminished professional growth. From a psychological viewpoint, ongoing mental exhaustion impairs self-regulation, making it difficult to align day-to-day actions with broader fiscal aspirations. Self-monitoring weakens under fatigue, producing lapses in adherence to saving strategies or expenditure limits. Reduced insight into behavioral patterns can increase vulnerability to impulsivity or succumbing to external pressures, thereby disrupting fiscal stability. On the practical side, mental fatigue often diminishes curiosity and appetite for learning new financial skills or technologies. The reluctance to engage with unfamiliar platforms or educational materials fosters stagnation, leaving individuals ill-equipped to navigate rapidly evolving financial landscapes. This limitation reduces adaptability, a critical factor in modern economies characterized by frequent regulatory changes and digital transformation. Moreover, the cumulative impact of these cognitive constraints can create a downward spiral wherein mental exhaustion begets inefficient resource utilization, which, in turn, generates additional stressors. Without intervention, this cycle reduces resilience, curtails problem-solving agility, and impairs the capacity to capitalize on emergent opportunities. Therefore, attention to cognitive replenishment through activities promoting mental clarity is paramount. Methods such as scheduled breaks, cognitive exercises, and structured routines designed to optimize focus can mitigate the deleterious effects of fatigue. Likewise, fostering environments that reduce unnecessary cognitive load or distractions allows for more efficient processing of complex fiscal information. Overall, recognizing the extensive repercussions of prolonged psychological weariness on intellectual functioning and behavioral patterns paves the way for targeted strategies to restore and enhance performance in economic matters. Addressing these elements contributes significantly to overcoming barriers that restrict financial advancement and personal fulfillment. Chronic cognitive strain can have substantial effects on neurophysiological functions that underlie financial competence. Prolonged activation of stress-related neural pathways often leads to diminished activity in regions responsible for abstract reasoning and future-oriented planning. This reduction hampers complex analyses required for evaluating investment options or long-term fiscal strategies. Furthermore, chronic overactivation of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal (HPA) axis alters neural circuitry, creating a predisposition toward rigid thinking and resistance to innovative solutions, which can limit adaptability to shifting market conditions or evolving personal financial. Neuromodulators such as dopamine, integral to reward-based learning and goal pursuit, are suppressed under prolonged strain, leading to decreased enthusiasm for initiating or maintaining tasks like budgeting or savings accumulation. As a consequence, individuals may experience diminished perseverance, resulting in interrupted progress toward monetary objectives or disengagement from planning activities, which can cascade into more significant fiscal deficits over time. Moreover, vigilance deficits arising from continuous mental overload reduce sensitivity to subtle cues essential for recognizing opportunities or threats in fiscal environments. This impairment manifests as a decreased capacity to monitor and interpret financial fluctuations, contractual terms, or policy changes that could impact personal wealth. Impaired attentional monitoring also affects timely responses to administrative responsibilities such as bill payments, tax filings, or investment rebalancing, increasing the risk of penalties or lost benefits. Factors influencing interpersonal dynamics related to finances should also be considered. Cognitive overload often results in social withdrawal or reduced capacity to effectively communicate personal needs and constraints during financial discussions. This hampers collaboration and resource sharing, essential components of cooperative economic arrangements such as joint budgeting or collective investments. The consequent isolation reinforces unilateral pressure and may perpetuate suboptimal fiscal decisions made without input from trusted advisors or partners. Physiological symptoms linked to sustained mental overextension, including disrupted sleep cycles and chronic aches, further diminish intellectual stamina necessary for interpreting new financial information or adjusting to complex documentation. Sleep irregularities compromise memory encoding processes crucial for retaining fiscal education, while somatic discomfort detracts from concentration spans required during analytical evaluations of multiple financial scenarios. Cognitive distortions under persistent strain also skew risk assessments. Overgeneralized fears or unwarranted pessimism may discourage exploration of diverse asset classes or innovative income streams, fostering an overly cautious approach. Conversely, momentary cognitive lapses can promote unsound speculation.